Ava Whitmore never imagined she would be the woman dragging a half-packed suitcase through a marble hallway on Christmas night, her son Jonah clinging to her coat, the snow outside Manhattan glittering like broken glass. But here she was, breath shaking, heart splintered, moving fast before fear could freeze her feet. Grayson's penthouse, once her gilded cage, felt colder than the wind. The Christmas tree still glowed in the corner, draped in silver ornaments. Grayson insisted on buying F. Upstairs, she had found the documents. A full sign. He was. And her ha. Ava forced a smile. The kind mothers create when they're breaking. Yes, Bab. In the office, Grayson's MacBook Pro still glowed with an open email from Delilah Crane, his lover, his accomplice, the woman whispering poison into his ambition. The subject line felt like a slap. Ava Sweb. She grabbed Jonah's coat, lifted him into her arms, and stepped into the hallway. The elev? Down. But behind her, lights flickered in the penthouse window. Grayson had. And when he opened that office door and saw the documents missing, everything. From the outside, Ava Whitmore and Grayson Hale looked like the couple New York magazines loved to photograph him. A rising corporate star with tailored suits and a Rolex that never stopped ticking. Her, the quiet beauty with soft eyes who fit the Park Avenue life like a delicate ornament placed on a shelf. But ornaments don't breathe, they don't break. And Ava had been breaking long before Christmas night. When they first met at a medical charity gala 7 years earlier, Ava was working 2 jobs, one at a pediatric clinic and one at a late-night diner to pay off student debt. Grayson was already ascending, the kind of man who spoke about 5-year plans, the way others spoke about vacations. He liked how humble she was, how grateful, how impressed by his world. She liked how confident he seemed, how safe he felt. She didn't realize safety can be mistaken for control when you're young and tired and longing for stability. Their relationship moved fast. Too fast. Within 6 months, she had moved into his Manhattan apartment. Within a year, they were married. And within 2 years, Ava was pregnant alone in that penthouse, while Grayson traveled weekly for work, always chasing the next title, the next deal, the next applause. The first signs of trouble were so small they were almost invisible. The way he corrected her in front of friends, the way he chose her clothes before dinners so she matched the room better. The way he insisted she quit her clinic job because a Hale wife doesn't need to work. When Ava struggled with postpartum depression, Grayson dismissed it. "You're too emotional," he'd say, pouring another drink. "Everyone has hard days, Ava. Don't make this dramatic." She tried to talk to him. He tried not to listen. And slowly, the Ava who once laughed easily became the Ava who whispered. The Ava who once spoke dreams aloud became the Ava who apologized for taking up space. She stopped inviting coworkers over, stopped calling the few relatives she had left, stopped telling the truth about how lonely she felt living among crystal chandeliers and marble floors that echoed her silence back at her. Even Jonah felt it. He was only 4, but children feel what adults hide. He flinched whenever Grayson raised his voice. He clung to Ava like she was the only safe harbor in a city filled with storms. Then Delilah Crane entered the picture. Delilah Sharp Heels, Sharper Smile joined Grayson's department 2 years into his promotion. She admired him loudly, laughed at jokes Ava didn't find funny, and whispered career advice that fed his ego like gasoline on flame. Ava didn't know at first. She only sensed the distance widening, the late nights multiplying, the scent of a perfume she didn't own drifting from Grayson's dress shirts. But she said nothing. When you've been slowly conditioned to believe you're too sensitive, silence becomes easier than truth. By their 5th anniversary, the marriage had become a performance. Photos looked happy. Friends saw luxury. Neighbors saw success. But none of them saw Ava crying quietly in the bathroom at 2 a.m., holding a hand over her mouth so Jonah wouldn't wake. They didn't see the documents Grayson kept locked in his office drawer. They didn't see the custody plan drafted months before Christmas. They didn't see how long he'd been preparing to replace her. But Ava would see everything soon. And the discovery would become the spark that burned the entire illusion down. Because a marriage built on control doesn't crumble. It collapses loudly, violently, and all at once. Ava used to be someone who filled rooms with warmth. Not loud, not dazzling, just quietly steady, the kind of presence that made people breathe easier. But after 5 years inside Grayson Hale's world, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her in the penthouse mirror. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was slow, deliberate, wrapped in compliments that felt like silk but tightened like rope. "Wear something darker," he'd say before corporate parties. "It looks more sophisticated. Don't mention your old jobs. People don't need to hear that story. You're lucky, Ava. Most women would kill for this life." Each sentence rearranged her piece by piece, until she existed the way he preferred, soft-spoken, polished, agreeable. A wife who wouldn't embarrass him in front of executives or donors. A mother who stayed home and kept quiet. A woman who knew her place. The penthouse reflected the same control. Sleek, cold, curated. Crystal vases she never picked. Furniture she wasn't allowed to adjust. Even the scent in the apartment came from a diffuser. Grayson programmed himself. "Neutral and professional," he said. Ava felt like another object in the home. Beautiful, displayed, replaceable. It became clearest the night of his promotion gala. She remembered stepping out of the bedroom wearing a blue dress she loved, simple, soft, the color of calm. Grayson didn't even hide his irritation. "Change," he snapped. "That dress photographs terribly." She froze. "Photographs? Grayson, it's a celebration, not a press. Do you want people to think I don't take care of my wife?" The words hit harder than any shout. She changed. At the gala, he introduced her to colleagues as if she were an accessory. "This is Ava," he said once, without looking at her. "My wife. She used to work in healthcare." Used to. As if motherhood erased her skills. As if he had lifted her out of insignificance. She smiled politely through the evening, clutching a champagne flute she never finished, feeling the floor tilt under her feet. On the car ride home, she stared out the window, Manhattan's skyline glittering like something unreachable. She wondered if this was adulthood performing happiness, suppressing fear. Grayson didn't notice. Or worse, he noticed and didn't care. Then came the criticisms, disguised as concern. "You really should lose the baby weight. It's been years, Ava." "Thank you, Forstner. You're overreacting again. Are you on your medication? Stop crying. Jonah will think you're unstable." She didn't know when he started saying things like that. She only knew she believed him. She started checking herself before speaking, editing every sentence, rehearsing apologies in the shower. In a home full of marble and glass, she still felt invisible. But the cruelest shift came when Delilah Crane entered their lives. Delilah didn't just feed Grayson's ego. She fed his delusion that Ava was holding him back. Ava once overheard them on speakerphone. Grayson didn't realize she was in the hall. "You've outgrown her," Delilah murmured. "You need someone who understands ambition." Ava's heart cracked. Quietly, Grayson didn't defend her. He didn't even pause. From that moment on, Ava sensed he wasn't just neglecting her. He was sculpting an exit strategy. Every cold comment, every late night, every distant stare, they were clues she was losing her place in his carefully curated empire. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that Grayson wasn't trying to leave her. He was planning to replace her. And he had already begun. Ava first noticed Delilah Crane, the way a person notices a drop in temperature, subtle, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once it settles into the air. Delilah wasn't loud or crude about her presence. She slid into Grayson's life like a shadow stretching into a room, quiet but inevitable. Sleek black hair, a voice like polished glass, an ambition that shimmered beneath her smile. She moved through the office like she owned it. Grayson swore she was just a colleague, but colleagues didn't text past midnight. Colleagues didn't leave lipstick marks inside coffee mugs in someone else's kitchen sink. Ava found one on a Tuesday morning. She stood there holding the cup, staring at the faint coral stain like it was a confession. It wasn't hers. She didn't wear lipstick anymore. Grayson said it looked unprofessional on a mother. He dismissed everything the moment she asked. "Delilah?" "Ava, she's in a relationship with someone from finance. Stop imagining things." He kissed her forehead and rolled his eyes, the way someone reacts to a stubborn child. Ava laughed weakly, apologizing before she even realized she was apologizing. But cracks widened quickly. Delilah started calling the penthouse late at night. When Ava answered, Delilah hung up. When Grayson answered, he walked into another room. Ava tried to believe he was faithful. tried to believe she wasn't losing her mind. She even called Emma Brooks, the therapist who had helped her through postpartum anxiety. "Do you think I'm paranoid?" Ava whispered into the phone. Emma paused gently. "I think you're scared." "But fear doesn't erase intuition," Ava tends to. Still, Ava stayed silent. She had learned too well how Grayson punished drama. Then came the charity gala, the night everything shifted. Ava arrived alone after hiring a sitter, wearing a dress she chose herself for the first time in years. Soft champagne silk, gentle, hopeful. She wanted to feel like a woman again, not a ghost. But the moment she stepped into the ballroom, she saw it. Grayson and Delilah, standing too close beneath chandeliers, their bodies angled like two people who had long forgotten to hide. Delilah's hand brushed his sleeve. He didn't move away. Murmurs rippled around the room. Ava felt them before she heard them. "Isn't that his wife? I thought he said she was unstable. She doesn't fit in here." Ava's cheeks burned. She turned to leave, but a voice stopped her. "Mrs. Hale?" It was a senior board member, Mr. Landon. He lowered his voice. "You should know. Delilah has been campaigning for your husband's promotion. She calls herself his closest advisor." A pause. "Some say more than that." Ava's throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know what everyone else already suspects." Everyone else. The words cut deepest. She left the gala early, walking through Manhattan's freezing night without a coat. She didn't cry, she felt beyond tears, as if even her sadness had gone numb. But the real twist came the next morning. A courier delivered a thick envelope addressed to Grayson. It slid from the stack of mail when she gathered it, spilling papers across the kitchen island. Legal papers. Custody papers. Her name typed in sterile ink. Her child listed as Jonah Hale Minor. Her role, non-essential caregiver. Her knees buckled. Her breath vanished. Grayson hadn't been having an affair. He had been preparing for a future without her. And Delilah Crane wasn't just the other woman. She was helping him erase Ava entirely. The stack of custody documents lay scattered across the marble kitchen island, like the aftermath of a storm Ava never saw coming. She kept reading the same line again and again, hoping the words would change if she blinked hard enough. Primary custody recommended. Father. Mother requires emotional evaluation. Limited visitation to be determined. IT4. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Emotional evaluation? Grayson was painting her as unstable, weaponizing every tear he caused, every anxiety he ignored, every moment of pain he had forced her to carry alone. The front door opened. "Ava? Why are these out?" Grayson's voice floated in casually, as if he hadn't just detonated her entire life. She looked up at him, eyes red, breath trembling. "You filed for custody, behind my back." He didn't flinch, he didn't apologize. Instead, he sighed a long, patronizing sigh he reserved for when she was being dramatic. "Ava, don't start. This is what's best for Jonah. You can't provide the stability he needs." "Stability?" Her voice cracked. "I've raised him. I've been here every day while you—" He cut her off sharply. "Don't pretend you're some hero. You can barely manage yourself, let alone a child." The words hit her chest like a physical blow. But the true devastation came from the small sound behind them. A sniff. A tiny gasp. Jonah. Their 4-year-old son stood in the hallway, clutching the stuffed elephant Ava bought him when he was born. His curls were messy, cheeks flushed from sleep, eyes wide with confusion. "Daddy, why are you yelling at Mommy?" His voice was small, trembling. Ava's heart split open. Grayson turned, startled. "Buddy, go back to bed. This isn't— Are you taking me away from Mommy?" Jonah whispered. Ava froze. Grayson stiffened. The room shifted suddenly, too bright, too sharp, too real. "Who told you that?" Grayson demanded. "You did," Jonah breathed. "I heard you talking on the phone. You said Mommy was broken." Ava's knees almost buckled. Grayson's eyes flickered, rage, guilt, calculation. He stepped toward Jonah. "You misheard. Daddy would never." But Jonah backed away, pressing into Ava's leg. "I don't want to live without Mommy." Grayson's tone hardened, the mask slipping. "Jonah, stop being difficult. This is an adult situation." Ava finally found her voice thin but steady. "Grayson, stop. He's scared." "I'm handling it," he snapped. "No," Ava whispered. "You're hurting him." Something inside Grayson cracked. Maybe it was pride, maybe entitlement, maybe the realization he was losing control. He slammed the documents onto the counter. I earn the money. I make the decisions. And I'm not letting you poison my son against me. Ava's breath caught. I'm poisoning him? You can barely function, Ava. You're fragile. Mommy isn't fragile, Jonah suddenly cried, his voice shaking with a bravery far larger than his small frame. Mommy always takes care of me. Mommy helps me sleep when I'm scared. Mommy loves me. The silence afterward was suffocating. Grayson's jaw tightened. Go to your room, Jonah. No. Jonah's lip quivered, but he didn't move. I want Mommy. Ava knelt, pulling her son into her arms. She felt his tiny heartbeat pounding against her chest. She felt his fear, his loyalty, his innocence. And something inside her finally snapped into clarity. This wasn't a marriage anymore. This wasn't a home. This was a battleground, and her son was standing in the crossfire. She rose, holding Jonah close. This ends tonight, Ava whispered, more to herself than to him. Grayson frowned. What does that mean? Ava met his eyes steady, certain, unrecognizable, even to herself. It means you won't get to decide what happens to us anymore. And for the first time, Grayson Hale knew she meant it. The moment Jonah's small arms wrapped around her, something inside Ava Whitmore, something she thought had died long ago, came fiercely back to life. A mother's instinct, sharper than fear, louder than shame. She held him tightly, feeling the tremble of his tiny body against her chest. His tears soaked into her sweater. His heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird. Grayson stood across the room, stunned. He wasn't used to losing control of a moment. He wasn't used to anyone defying him, least of all the wife he had spent years molding into silence. Ava, he finally said, voice low, uneven, we're not doing this tonight. Yes, they were. Because there was no tomorrow left in this house. Ava rose slowly, Jonah still clinging to her hip. She felt lightheaded, shaky, like she wasn't fully inside her own body. But she was moving, because if she stopped, she would fall apart completely. I'm taking Jonah to his room, she said softly. Grayson blocked her path. No, you're not storming off like a child. Her fingers tightened around Jonah's back. Move. Ava, don't be ridiculous. Move, Grayson. The authority in her voice startled them both. He stepped aside without realizing he had. Inside Jonah's room, she set him on the bed and smoothed his hair back gently. Are we leaving, Daddy? He whispered. Her throat tightened. Not yet, baby, but we're going somewhere safe. He nodded sleepily, trusting her more deeply than she trusted herself. When he finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, Ava backed out of the room and shut the door quietly behind her. The hallway suddenly felt like a tunnel closing in. Grayson was waiting. You embarrassed me in front of our son, he said, voice sharp as broken glass. Ava swallowed. Jonah heard everything because you weren't careful. No, he heard what you wanted him to hear. You're manipulating him just like you're trying to manipulate me. She blinked. Manipulate you? You filed for custody without telling me. You hired lawyers behind my back. You let your mistress, yes, I know, whisper in your ear about taking my child. He flinched, just slightly. You're unstable, Ava. You cry at everything. You lose track of time. You can't handle stress. This is why I had to take steps. Steps? Her voice echoed down the hallway. You mean tearing our family apart? He leaned in, lowering his voice. A judge will see it my way. Men with my career, my income, they win. Women like you don't. The words sliced through her like a blade. Women like you. Women who came from nothing. Women who didn't belong in penthouses. Women who were easy to erase. Ava steadied herself against the wall. She could feel the weight of every year, every insult. Every moment he made her feel small. She felt them all gathering inside her, not as weakness, but as resolve. I'm leaving tonight, she whispered. Grayson laughed once, a cold, humorless sound. Where will you go? You have no money, no family, no support. You walk out that door, and I promise you, you'll lose Jonah. Something inside Ava snapped. Not fear. Not despair. Something stronger. You already lost him, she said quietly. You just don't know it yet. His eyes darkened. Ava, don't you dare. But she was already walking away. Heart pounding, legs shaking. She pushed into the bedroom and grabbed a suitcase. Clothes, Jonah's pajamas, toothbrushes, his stuffed elephant, documents, anything she could reach. She zipped the bag, hands trembling uncontrollably. This was real. This was happening. She was leaving her marriage, her home, her life, and she had no plan, no guarantee, no safety net. Only a child sleeping down the hall who needed her more than anything. Ava lifted the suitcase. And for the first time in years, she felt something close to freedom. Terrifying, fragile, unstoppable freedom. The penthouse was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that follows after something has shattered. Ava moved through the rooms quickly, forcing herself not to think, not to feel. If she stopped, fear would catch up. If she hesitated, Grayson would win. She slipped into Jonah's room. His nightlight cast a warm glow across his face, softening the lines of worry a 4-year-old should never have worn. She gently lifted him into her arms. He stirred, but didn't wake his cheek, finding her shoulder instinctively, trusting her even in sleep. A mother's courage is a strange thing. Trembling hands, racing heart but unwavering. She grabbed the suitcase and stepped into the hallway. Grayson was waiting. Of course he was. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. The Christmas lights reflected in his eyes, making him look almost festive if not for the coldness beneath. "You're not leaving," he said, voice low, steady, terrifying in its certainty. Ava shifted Jonah's weight in her arms, her breath unsteady. "Move, Grayson." "No." He pushed away from the wall. "You don't get to make decisions anymore. Not when you're emotional, not when you're unstable." She swallowed hard. "I'm taking our son somewhere safe. Thanks for watching." It's double sabluded. "Safe?" He laughed once, sharp and cutting. "You think you can provide that? You walked into this life with nothing. I made this family. I built this home. Without me, you're enough." Her whisper was stronger than any shout. "You don't get to define me anymore." For the first time, something flickered across Grayson's face, surprise. Maybe even fear. She wasn't supposed to fight back. But Ava didn't wait for a reply. She walked past him, toward the elevator, toward the unknown. "Ava." His voice snapped across the marble floor like a whip. "If you take one more step, I swear I'll bury you in court. You'll never see Jonah again." Jonah stirred at the sound of his father's anger, whimpering softly. Ava held him tighter, kissing the top of his head. Her voice shook. "You already broke everything, Grayson. I'm just protecting what's left." She pressed the elevator button with a trembling finger. The doors slid open with a soft chime, too gentle for a moment, so life-changing. Grayson lunged forward, but not fast enough. The doors closed between them. Ava exhaled shakily as the elevator descended from the 30th floor. Each number felt like a countdown to the end of her old life and the terrifying beginning of something new. In the lobby, the doorman, an older man named Leon, who always slipped Jonah extra candy canes, stared at her in shock. "Mrs. Hale, are you leaving tonight?" Ava nodded, eyes glossy. "Please don't tell him where we go." "And Fra." Leon hesitated, then nodded firmly. "You two stay safe, all right?" Outside, Manhattan glowed with holiday lights, joyful and indifferent. Snow drifted around them like feathers falling from a torn sky. Ava lifted Jonah's hood and wrapped her coat around him. She stepped into the street and raised her hand. A yellow cab pulled over, headlights cutting through the snow. As she buckled Jonah into the back seat, he blinked awake, confusion clouding his little face. "Mommy, where are we going?" A tear slipped down her cheek, soft, silent, unstoppable. "Somewhere Daddy can't hurt us," she whispered. The taxi pulled away from the curb. Ava watched the penthouse grow smaller and smaller until it became just another window in a skyline of thousands. Another story ending. On the 30th floor, a light flicked on. Grayson's silhouette appeared at the window. And for the first time, Ava saw him not as her husband, but as the man she was finally escaping. The cab moved through Manhattan like a small, fragile boat in a sea of glittering lights and holiday chaos. Ava held Jonah tightly, her fingertips numb not from the cold but from the adrenaline still pounding through her veins. Every traffic light felt like a question she couldn't answer. Every turn felt like it might lead her back to the life she was running from. "Mommy, are we going to Grandma's?" Jonah murmured sleepily from her lap. Ava's throat tightened. "Grandma lives in the sky now, baby." He nodded, accepting her answer with the innocence only children still possess. Then, after a moment, "Are we going somewhere safe?" Her breath caught. "Yes, sweetheart, somewhere safe." But safe was still a concept, an idea she hadn't reached yet. She gave the driver an address she barely remembered, an old friend's apartment in Jersey City, someone she hadn't spoken to in years, someone she prayed was home. She couldn't go to a hotel. Grayson would track her card within minutes. She couldn't go to a shelter. The paparazzi around the Hale family would tear that place apart if they caught wind of it. Jonah drifted off again halfway through the tunnel. Ava watched his chest rise and fall, small and steady, as if unaware of the earthquake that had just cracked their lives open. She gently brushed a curl from his forehead. He had her eyes, her softness, her heart, and Grayson wanted to take him away. Tears threatened again, but she blinked them back. Not now. Jonah needed stability, even if she didn't have any left for herself. The cab pulled up to a modest brownstone. The driver helped her unload the suitcase. "You sure you're okay, miss?" he asked. No, she wasn't. Yes, she lied. He hesitated before nodding and driving off. Ava shifted Jonah into one arm and rang the doorbell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the porch light flicked on, revealing a familiar face. "Lydia," Ava whispered. Her old college roommate blinked in shock. "Ava, it's Christmas Eve. Oh my God, what happened?" Ava swallowed everything. The years of silence, the humiliation, the exhaustion, and managed, "Can we stay for tonight? Just tonight." Lydia stepped aside instantly. "You can stay as long as you need." Inside, the warmth hit Ava like a wave. Soft lights draped around the small living room, a homemade wreath on the table, a half-eaten plate of cookies next to a glass of milk left out for Santa. Lydia's daughter peeked out from down the hall, curious. Ava set Jonah on the couch, tucking a blanket around him. He fell back asleep without a sound. Lydia knelt beside her. "Ava, you look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't slept in years," she whispered. They sat in the quiet for a moment, the glow of Christmas lights reflecting in Ava's tired eyes. "Did he hurt you?" Lydia asked gently. Ava shook her head. "Not with his hands. But sometimes words break you worse." Lydia nodded, understanding more than she admitted. Ava looked down at her shaking hands. "He's trying to take Jonah from me. He filed everything. He planned it. Her voice collapsed, trembling like thin glass. Lydia reached out, squeezing her hand. "You got out. That's the bravest thing you've ever done." Ava wanted to believe that, but all she could think was, how long until Grayson found them? How long until he dragged her back into court, into chaos, into hell? She closed her eyes. Tonight was the first night without him. The first night she wasn't his wife. The first night she had truly chosen herself. And even in the middle of fear, even wrapped in uncertainty, there was a small, undeniable flicker of something new. Hope. Christmas morning should have been quiet, warm, filled with soft laughter and wrapping paper. Instead, Ava woke on Lydia's couch with a stiff neck, a pounding headache, and the weight of her entire life pressing on her chest. For a brief, blurry moment, she forgot where she was. Then Jonah shifted beside her, his tiny hand curled around her arm, and reality came flooding back. She had left. She had really left. Ava brushed Jonah's hair gently. He was still asleep, peaceful in a way she hadn't seen in months. She wished she could freeze that moment for him, for herself. But morning brought consequences. Morning brought clarity. Morning brought war. Lydia walked in, carrying 2 mugs. "You need the strong stuff today." Ava accepted the coffee with shaky hands. "I don't know what happens now." "You breathe," Lydia said simply. "And then you call someone who knows what to do." Hasmar. But before Ava could respond, her phone vibrated violently, 10 missed calls, then 12, then 15. All from Grayson. Then a text appeared. "Ava, answer your phone. You're making a mistake. Come home." Another. "You won't get custody. Don't push this." And another. "If you don't return Jonah today, I will involve the police." Ava's stomach twisted. "Lydia, what if he really calls them? What if they think I kidnapped my own child?" Lydia tightened her jaw. "They won't. You left for safety. That matters. But you need legal help immediately." Ava hesitated. "I can't afford a lawyer, not one good enough to fight him." "Actually," Lydia said slowly, "there's someone who owes you a favor." Ava blinked. "Who?" "Michael Larson. A memory flickered, brown hair, kind eyes, a pre-med student with a quiet crush on her back in college. They had lost touch after graduation, but she remembered him as one of the few people who ever made her feel genuinely seen. "He's a family attorney now," Lydia explained. "Good one. And he hates men like Grayson." Ava stared at her phone, trembling. What if he says no? Lydia shook her head. "Ava, if you don't ask for help now, Grayson will crush you. Call him." Hands unsteady, Ava dialed the number Lydia found. Michael picked up on the second ring. "Ava Whitmore?" His voice was startled but warm. "Wow, it's been years. Are you okay?" Her voice cracked instantly. "No, I'm not." End quote. She explained everything. The affair, the documents, Jonah overhearing the fight, her escape. She expected judgment, maybe even disbelief. Instead, Michael said, "Good. You did the right thing leaving. Now let me help you keep your son." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't have money for a retainer yet." "I didn't ask," he interrupted gently. "Ava, I remember who you were, and nobody deserves what he's putting you through. I'll represent you pro bono until we stabilize things. But listen carefully. Grayson Hale is going to fight dirty. Men like him always do." Ava pressed a hand to her heart. "I know. And Ava," Michael added softly, "you're stronger than you think." Just then, Jonah stirred awake, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, where are we?" "A friend's house," she whispered. "We're safe." He nodded slowly, leaning into her side, trusting her completely. Michael's voice came faintly through the phone. "We will win this, Ava, but you need to be brave. Braver than you've ever been." She looked around Lydia's small living room. Nothing like the penthouse she left behind. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't stability. But it was safe. And it was hers. Ava inhaled deeply. War had begun. But for the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. Grayson Hale had built his reputation on precision, flawless presentations, flawless projections, flawless control. But on the morning after Ava escaped with Jonah, precision abandoned him. His penthouse felt cavernous and wrong, as if someone had stripped the walls of oxygen. The silence was suffocating. He stalked through the apartment, picking up toys, blankets, tiny socks Jonah always kicked off. Each item felt like an accusation. "This is your fault," he muttered to himself. He wasn't used to losing. Not promotions, not negotiations, and certainly not battles within his own home. Yet Ava had slipped through his fingers in a single night, taking Jonah. Taking the image of the perfect Hale family he'd worked so hard to curate. He called her again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. He slammed his fist onto the marble counter, rattling a glass that cracked under the impact. The sound startled him. He didn't break things. He made things bend. He pulled up his contacts and dialed Delilah. She answered on the second ring, voice smooth as silk. "Grayson, I heard you left the gala early. Everything okay?" "No," he hissed. Ava left. She took Jonah. A small pause. Too small. Almost calculated. "Well," Delilah said carefully, "maybe this accelerates the custody process. The courts don't appreciate impulsive behavior." He narrowed his eyes. "Are you implying she's unstable?" "You told me she cries at everything," Delilah said lightly. "Judges look at patterns. If she ran away, it supports your case." As a teenager's. He wasn't sure why her confidence irritated him. Ava leaving was a disaster, not leverage. "I need Jonah home," he snapped. "The optics are terrible." "Optics? Grayson, your wife just fled Manhattan with your child. I think you should be more concerned with—" "Don't tell me what to be concerned with," he barked. Silence. Then a soft, frigid exhale. "You're spiraling. Pull yourself together." He hung up without answering. In the office, he paced. His MacBook Pro glowed with unread emails, including one flagged by his finance director: urgent discrepancies in Q3 spending. He ignored it. His world was burning at home. He couldn't afford another fire. But his problems didn't care. At 9:14 a.m., his boss, Carl Wyndham, called. "Grayson, I need you in the office. Now. I'm dealing with a family situation. This isn't a request." Dumbs. Grayson arrived at the Park Avenue Tower 30 minutes later, wearing the same clothes from last night, jaw locked so tightly it ached. His assistant avoided eye contact. Employees whispered as he passed. He stepped into Carl's office. 2 board members sat waiting. "What is this?" Grayson demanded. Carl folded his hands. There's been an internal audit. Some red flags came up connected to your department. Grayson stiffened. Miscommunications. I can clear everything up. Asku. Carl's gaze sharpened. We also heard your wife left with your child last night. Reporters have been calling. Donors too. His stomach dropped. That's private. Not when your public image is tied to the company, Carl said bluntly. Your leadership is being questioned professionally and personally. It felt like someone was slicing open his life piece by piece. He wanted to shout, threaten, dominate. But all he managed was, "This is temporary." End quote. Carl exchanged a glance with the board members. We're placing you on leave until further notice. Leave. The word detonated inside him. Grayson had always believed Ava was the fragile one, the breakable one. But now, standing under the weight of suspicion, scandal, and the shadow of losing Jonah, he felt the cracks forming in places he never imagined. As he stepped into the hallway, his phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. You won't win this, Grayson. Not this time. Exected. He stopped cold. Michael Larson, a name he hadn't expected to see again. The war had officially begun. And for the first time, Grayson wasn't the one in control. Ava woke before dawn in Lydia's spare bedroom, her neck sore, her mind foggy, her chest tight from a night filled with half-sleep and full fear. The window glowed faintly with the first hints of sunrise over Jersey City. For a moment, she simply lay there, listening to Jonah's soft breathing beside her. He had crawled into her bed sometime during the night, tiny fingers clutching her arm even in sleep as if afraid she would disappear. Ava touched his cheek, her heart aching. I'm here, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. But the truth was, she had no idea where here even was. Physically, emotionally, legally, everything felt like a puzzle she had to solve without instructions. Downstairs, Lydia had already brewed coffee. The warm smell drifted up the hallway, soothing and overwhelming all at once. Ava descended slowly, exhaustion dragging at her bones. I made you oatmeal, Lydia said gently. You need something warm. Ava managed a grateful smile. Lydia, I can't keep taking advantage. You're not, Lydia cut in. You helped me survive college. Think of this as me returning the favor, 10 years late. Ava's throat tightened. It had been so long since someone helped her without expecting something in return. After breakfast, Michael Larson called. Ava, good morning, he said. Well, morning might be generous. How are you holding up? She exhaled shakily. I don't know. That's normal, he replied. But I've been reviewing the custody documents Grayson filed. They're aggressive. Extremely aggressive. Ava slumped into the couch. He acted like I was losing my mind. That's intentional, Michael said. Men like Grayson use strategy, not emotion. He wants full custody, not because he's a better parent, but because he wants control. Jonah is leverage. The words made her stomach twist. Can he win? Not if we move smart, he said. But Ava, I need you to hear this. The next few weeks will be brutal. He's going to attack your mental health, your employment history, your finances, anything he can twist. Ava stared down at her hands. I barely have a job left. I quit because he didn't want Jonah in daycare. That can work in your favor, Michael assured her. You sacrificed for your son. Judges notice sacrifice. Ava didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a woman drowning in the consequences of loving the wrong man for too long. After the call, Lydia handed her a manila folder. Here. I kept everything from when you stayed with me after graduation. Old resumes, the volunteer hours you did at the clinic, the recommendation letter from Dr. Morales. If Michael needs proof, you were capable and hardworking long before Grayson, this might help. Ava flipped through the papers, her eyes stinging as pieces of her old self stared back at her. She had forgotten that woman existed. That young woman who dreamed of becoming a pediatric counseling coordinator. That woman who studied until 3 a.m. That woman who believed she could build a life with her own hands, not live inside someone else's. A quiet strength stirred inside her, small, trembling, but real. Later that afternoon, Emma Brooks, the therapist she had seen years ago, returned her call. Ava, Emma said warmly, I'm so glad you reached out. Come in tomorrow. No fee. Just come. We'll work through this. Ava covered her eyes, overwhelmed. Thank you, Emma. I feel like I'm falling apart. No, Emma replied softly. You're falling out of a cage, and that can feel the same at first. End quote. End quote. Jonah wandered into the living room with his stuffed elephant. Mommy, he said, is Daddy mad? Ava swallowed hard. Daddy's confused, but Mommy's here, and Mommy's strong. The words surprised even her, because for the first time in a very, very long time, she almost believed them. Delilah Crane never believed in loyalty. Not to bosses. Not to lovers. And definitely not to men like Grayson Hale, men who thought their charm was currency and their ambition was irresistible. So when HR requested a mandatory meeting with her on Monday morning, Delilah didn't panic. She sauntered into the Park Avenue office, wearing a fitted black blazer and a confidence she'd sharpened over years of climbing. But the moment she stepped into the conference room, she spotted the company's internal investigator, and her blood ran cold. Miss Crane, the investigator began, we're reviewing questionable spending within your department. Your name appears on several requests linked to Mr. Hale. She flicked her hair, feigning confusion. I'd just file whatever Grayson approves. Interesting, the investigator said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was a printed email. Her email. She recognized the text instantly. Don't worry, I'll move the funds under the Q3 umbrella. No one will question you. Her stomach twisted. Those were supposed to be private messages sent from Grayson's personal phone. The investigator's tone sharpened. We're interviewing everyone involved. We expect your full cooperation. Delilah's pulse thundered. She wasn't just implicated, she was now the easiest scapegoat. When the meeting ended, she stormed into her office and locked the door. Only then did she allow the panic to crack through her polished exterior. Grayson had promised her protection. Grayson had promised her advancement. Grayson had promised her she would never get caught in the crossfire. And yet, here she was falling first. She dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. By the fifth call, her panic had calcified into rage. When he finally picked up, his voice was clipped. Delilah, I can't talk. I'm dealing with the fallout from whatever stunt Ava pulled. She stared at the wall, disbelief curdling inside her. I'm being investigated. They found my emails. Someone leaked them. That's your problem, he said coldly. You shouldn't have put anything in writing. My problem? She spat. You asked me to help hide the spending. That's not what I'll say under oath. Her heart stopped. You wouldn't. I need to protect myself, Delilah. I can't go down because you got sloppy. It was a clean slice so sharp she didn't feel it until the second after. Grayson, she whispered, voice trembling with betrayal. I covered for you. I backed you. I even defended you when people called you abusive. Thanks for watching. That's enough, he snapped. Handle your own mess. The line went dead. Delilah stared at her phone, her reflection distorted in the dark screen. A realization washed over her, icy and sobering. Grayson Hale wasn't just dangerous. He was disposable, and he had just disposed of her. She opened her laptop, her fingers shaking. She typed an email to herself, a backup of every incriminating message, voice memo, and financial document she'd kept. Insurance she once thought she'd never need. Her eyes paused on one file. A recording? Grayson's voice, unmistakably cruel. Ava won't win. I'll destroy her in court if I have to. Jonah belongs with me. Delilah exhaled sharply. Grayson had burned her bridge. Fine. She would burn his entire empire. Without giving herself time to reconsider, she sent an encrypted folder to an address Lydia had given her years ago, a contact she never imagined using. A family attorney named Michael Larson. In the message, she wrote only 4 words. She deserves the truth. Then she hit send. The moment she did, a strange calm settled over her. For the first time in a long time, Delilah Crane wasn't climbing toward anything. She was tearing something down. And Grayson Hale had no idea the woman he tried to use would become the woman who destroyed him. Michael Larson had handled countless divorce cases, but he rarely looked as shocked as he did the morning he opened the encrypted email from an unknown sender. His expression shifted, tightened, darkened while Ava watched him from the other side of his office, hands anxiously twisting in her lap. He clicked play on the first audio file. Grayson's voice filled the room, sharp and smug. Ava won't win. She's weak. I'll destroy her in court if I have to. Ava's breath hitched. She felt Jonah's stuffed elephant in her hands, squeezing it unconsciously for strength. Then the second file. Just hide the spending, Delilah. I'll clean it up once I get the promotion. Michael shut his laptop slowly, leaning back in his chair. Ava, this is big, bigger than your custody case. This is corporate fraud. Ava blinked, shaken. This isn't just Delilah trying to help me? No, he said firmly. This is someone trying to save themselves before the ship sinks, and they threw us the most valuable life raft imaginable. Ava's pulse pounded. What does this mean for Jonah? Michael leaned forward, elbows on his desk. It means Grayson is no longer the untouchable executive with a spotless record. He's now a liability. Judges look at patterns, financial dishonesty, emotional manipulation, attempts to erase you. This shifts the entire landscape. Thanks for watching. Ava felt dizzy, as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff and the ground had tilted beneath her. Is this legal to use? She whispered. Absolutely, Michael said. Delilah sent it voluntarily, and more importantly, Grayson incriminated himself. Ava's hands shook harder. I don't want to destroy him, Michael. I just want Jonah safe. Michael's gaze softened. Ava, listen to me. Protecting Jonah doesn't make you cruel. It makes you a mother. Beater. He printed several documents, sliding them across the desk. We're filing for emergency protective custody. Not because he's violent, but because he's dangerous in other ways. Financially, emotionally, strategically. Ava stared at the papers, her name typed neatly across the top. For years, she had seen her name only in the shadow of his Mrs. Hale, but now it stood alone. Ava Whitmore. Hers. Independent. Real. I can't believe he wanted to erase me, she whispered. Michael nodded grimly. He did. And now he's the one about to disappear. That evening, Ava sat on Lydia's couch with Jonah curled beside her, watching a cartoon he was barely paying attention to. His little fingers kept tracing the same circle on her sleeve, grounding himself, grounding her. Mommy, he murmured, are we going to stay here forever? Ava's heart cracked. No, baby. Just until things get better. Did Daddy do something bad? Ava took a shaky breath. Daddy made mistakes, grown-up mistakes. But you didn't do anything wrong. Jonah nodded, still uncertain. A knock at the door startled them both. Lydia answered, returning moments later with a large envelope. It's from Michael, she said softly. He sent everything you need for tomorrow's hearing. Ava opened it slowly. Legal forms, statements, exhibits, evidence. And on top printed transcripts of Grayson's recordings. She skimmed them, each line cutting, each sentence a reminder of how deeply he underestimated her. How thoroughly he believed she would never fight back. Her hands trembled. Lydia placed a warm hand on her shoulder. You don't have to be strong alone. Ava nodded slowly, exhaling a breath she'd been holding for years. Tomorrow, she would stand before a judge. Tomorrow, she would speak truths she had been forced to hide. Tomorrow, she would defend her son with evidence powerful enough to tear down Grayson Hale's empire. For the first time, Ava felt something fierce and steady rising inside her. Not fear. Not panic. Conviction. The truth had finally found her, and she was ready to use it. The hearing didn't end in triumph. It didn't end in defeat either. It ended the way most real battles do, messy, exhausting, and somewhere in the middle. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence, frowned deeply at Grayson's recordings, and granted Ava temporary custody of Jonah until the full investigation into Grayson's financial misconduct concluded. It was a victory, but not a final one. A pause, not an ending. When Ava walked out of the courthouse, holding Jonah's hand, and Michael's reassuring words echoing behind her, she felt something unexpected, lightness. Not happiness, not relief, but the faintest glimpse of what freedom might feel like if she could ever reach it fully. That afternoon, while Jonah napped at Lydia's, Ava sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, a chipped mug of coffee, and the kind of silence that felt like an invitation rather than a threat. She hadn't sat alone with her thoughts in years. Thoughts used to be dangerous. Thoughts used to hurt, but now they felt necessary. She scribbled words, erased them, wrote new ones. Thoughts about Jonah, about the marriage she lost long before she left, about the woman she used to be, ambitious, compassionate, good at her job, proud of her independence. She remembered loving pediatric care, the way children trusted her instantly, the way parents relaxed when she entered the room. She remembered wanting to run her own program one day, designing emotional support services for families in crisis. She remembered dreams she had buried beneath Park Avenue marble. Lydia peeked in. "Are you writing?" "I don't know," Ava said, half laughing, half crying. "I'm trying to remember who I was." Lydia stepped closer. "Maybe the better question is, who do you want to be now?" Ava exhaled shakily. "Someone Jonah can be proud of." "You already are," Lydia said. "But if you're asking about work, Michael knows a director at Street Luke's Pediatrics. They're hiring. I could make a call." Ava froze. "A real job? In a real hospital?" "Yes," Lydia smiled. "You deserve to rebuild, Ava. It's everything 7. The idea felt terrifying and thrilling, standing on her own feet again. Financially, emotionally, she didn't want to rely on Lydia forever. And the thought of facing Grayson someday as an independent woman, rather than the fragile shell he created, awakened something fierce inside her. That night, after Jonah fell asleep, Ava opened her old laptop, the one Grayson said was outdated and unnecessary once she stopped working. The screen flickered uncertainly, but it turned on. She found an unfinished resume from years ago. Her cursor hovered. Then she began typing. New experience. New goals. New address. New Ava. She didn't realize hours had passed until Lydia poked her head in again. "I haven't seen you this focused since college." "I forgot what it felt like," Ava whispered. The next morning, Ava sent her application. Her hands trembled when she hit submit, but not from fear, from the weight of possibility. 2 days later, Street Luke's called. "Miss Whitmore," the HR manager said warmly, "we'd love to interview you. Your background is exceptional." Exceptional, a word she hadn't heard in years. Ava covered her mouth, tears welling. "Thank you. Really, thank you." Lydia hugged her tightly, whispering, "See? You're rising." And for the first time since fleeing Manhattan, Ava believed it. That night, she tucked Jonah into bed and lingered at his side. His eyes fluttered sleepily. "Mommy," he murmured, "are we going to be okay?" Ava brushed his hair back, voice soft but certain. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be more than okay." Jonah smiled before drifting off. And when Ava stood, she felt stronger. Taller. Steadier. She wasn't healed yet. She wasn't safe yet. But she was climbing slowly, deliberately, out of the ruins Grayson left behind. And this time, she wasn't climbing alone. The interview at Street Luke's Pediatrics was scheduled for Tuesday morning, and Ava spent the entire commute rehearsing answers in her head, smoothing her skirt, checking Jonah's backpack for the 100th time. It felt surreal, returning to a hospital not as a frightened new mother, not as someone hiding behind her husband's shadow, but as a professional reclaiming her identity. Lydia drove her to the hospital and watched Jonah for the morning. "You've got this," she encouraged, squeezing Ava's hand before she stepped out. Ava inhaled deeply and entered the glass-front building, heart pounding with equal parts fear and excitement. What she didn't know was that this day, this ordinary Tuesday, would introduce her to someone who would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The interview went better than she dared hope. The director praised her experience, her empathy, her understanding of child trauma. Ava hadn't realized how much her personal pain had sharpened her professional instincts. "You have a natural gift," the director said. "We need people like you." When Ava stepped out of the conference room, relief flooded her so intensely her knees wobbled. She leaned against the wall and let out a shaky laugh. That's when she bumped into someone, literally. A soft thud. A startled gasp. "Oh, sorry," she blurted, stepping back. A man stood in front of her, holding a tablet and a small stack of patient files. Tall, slightly disheveled in a charming way, wearing a navy sweater instead of a suit. Warm brown eyes. A gentle, apologetic smile. "No, that one's on me," he said. "I walk while reading, not a great habit in crowded hallways." Ava flushed. "I should have been watching where I was going." He offered his hand. "I'm Noah Stone. I work upstairs in pediatric tech integration, basically the guy who fixes everything that stops working." She shook his hand briefly. "Ava Whitmore." Something flickered in his gaze, recognition, maybe empathy. "You're interviewing today?" "Yes," she said, surprised at how comfortable she suddenly felt. "Just finished." "Well, you seem like you'd be great here. People in pediatrics can sense heart the minute someone walks in." He paused, smile widening slightly. You walked in with a lot of it. A blush warmed her cheeks. Compliments from Grayson had always felt like weapons. Noah's felt like sunlight, unexpected, gentle, and strangely safe. Before she could respond, his tablet buzzed. Duty calls. But hey, good luck, Ava Whitmore. I hope we get to work together. He jogged off, nearly colliding with a nurse, laughing it off as he went. Ava watched him disappear around the corner, still feeling the echo of his kindness. She didn't know him. She didn't want to know anyone new. Romance wasn't even a thought. But something about Noah Stone stayed with her like a tiny, warm ember lodged in the cold edges of her heart. That afternoon, she stepped back into Lydia's apartment, where Jonah rushed to her immediately. Mommy, did you get the job? I think so, she laughed softly. I really think so. While Jonah told her about the pancake tower Lydia made him, Ava's phone buzzed. She froze. Not Grayson. Not Michael. Street Luke's. With trembling fingers, she answered. Ava, this is HR. We'd like to officially offer you the position. Her breath caught, tears welled instantly. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'd love that. Lydia hugged her from behind. Jonah cheered. And for the first time, Ava felt the ground beneath her solidify. A job. A chance. A beginning. Later, as she tucked Jonah into bed, she replayed the day, the interview, the offer, and unexpectedly, the moment she collided with Noah Stone. She didn't know who he would become in her story. But she knew one thing. When everything in her life had been falling apart, he appeared at the very moment she began to rise. 3 weeks passed, and Ava's world slowly began stitching itself into something steadier. She started her new job at Street Luke's Pediatrics, rediscovered her confidence, and built a routine for Jonah that didn't involve holding her breath. She wasn't healed, but she was standing, and that was more than she ever thought possible. But storms tend to return when skies finally clear. It was a Thursday evening. Jonah was coloring on the living room floor, and Ava had just finished preparing dinner with Lydia when the doorbell rang. Not a gentle ring, a sharp, insistent one. Lydia frowned. Are you expecting someone? Ava's stomach twisted. No. She opened the door. Grayson Hale stood on the porch, no suit, no polished smile, no armor. Just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was unkempt, his eyes sunken, his posture tense. Behind him, the winter wind whipped his coat open, revealing a version of Grayson she had never seen. Disoriented, desperate, human. Ava, he breathed. Please, can we talk? Her heart thudded hard. Jonah's crayons went silent behind her. Lydia stepped forward instantly. You need to leave. But Grayson lifted a hand. Please, I just need to speak with her. 2 minutes, that's all. You have no. Ava inhaled slowly and stepped outside, closing the door behind her to shield Jonah. What do you want, Grayson? Her voice was steady, even though her pulse was anything but. He swallowed hard. They put me on full suspension. They're investigating everything, my spending, my projects. Carl won't take my calls. And Delilah. His jaw clenched. She betrayed me. Ava didn't flinch. You betrayed yourself. He exhaled shakily. I know I hurt you, Ava. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? She cut in. Mistakes are forgetting an anniversary or saying something unkind. You spent months trying to erase me from Jonah's life. You tried to take my child. You lied. You cheated. You built a prison around me and convinced me it was a home. His eyes flickered with shame. I was under pressure. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to file for full custody, she said, under oath. He winced. I was wrong. Wishatuzing lash. What do you want from me, Grayson? His next words stunned her. I want my family back. Ava stepped away, as if he had struck her. No, absolutely not. Ava, please. I can change. I've started therapy. I've cut contact with Delilah. I know I messed up, but I'm begging you, give me another chance. For Jonah. For us. She shook her head. You're not asking for another chance. You're asking for control. No. He looked genuinely broken. I'm asking for forgiveness. Wispastovlians. Forgiveness, Ava said softly, is not the same as reconciliation. He stared at her, uncomprehending. You think this is about a fight? She continued. Grayson, you didn't just cross a line. You detonated every boundary I had. You tried to take our son. Do you understand what that does to a mother? His voice cracked. I miss him. She swallowed. Then you should have fought to keep him safe, not to own him. For a moment, the wind was the only sound. Ava, he whispered, I don't know how to live without you. You should have thought about that, she said, before you taught me how to live without you. Grayson's breath hitched. His eyes reddened. So, that's it? You're choosing to destroy this family? No, Ava said. I'm choosing to protect it. He staggered back, wounded. You'll regret this. No, Ava said calmly, but you might. She turned to go inside. Behind her, Grayson's voice cracked open in the cold air. Ava, please. But she didn't turn back. Because this time, she wasn't the one who broke. He was. The courthouse smelled like old paper, cold marble, and fear. Ava hadn't expected to tremble this much, not after everything she had already survived. But the moment she stepped into the family courtroom, holding Jonah's tiny hand, her legs threatened to give out. Michael walked beside her, calm and steady, the anchor she desperately needed. Remember, he murmured, you're not the one on trial. Grayson is. Let him unravel. But Ava wasn't trembling because of Grayson. She was trembling because of what this place represented. Every doubt, every wound, every moment, she had been convinced she wasn't enough. Jonah squeezed her fingers. Mommy, is Daddy gonna be here? Ava didn't answer quickly enough. Michael did. Yes, buddy. But you'll be with me while the adults talk. You're safe. Jonah nodded, trusting him instantly. Ava wished she could trust herself the same way. As they entered the courtroom, Grayson was already there. He stood when she walked in, eyes red-rimmed, suit wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. For a split second, a sliver of a moment, she saw the man she once married, vulnerable and lost. But then he opened his mouth. Ava, he said too loudly, too desperately. Please, can we step outside? We don't have to do this. Michael stepped between them. Sit down, Hale. Grayson glared at him before turning softened eyes back on Ava. We can fix this. I swear I'll be better. Ava lifted her chin. Sit down, Grayson. The judge entered, and the room settled. Case number 48-213. Hale versus Whitmore, the clerk called. Ava swallowed hard. Hearing her name separate from his still felt strange and liberating. Grayson's attorney went first. He painted Ava as unstable, overwhelmed, financially dependent, emotionally fragile. Every word was a sharpened knife. Every sentence twisted a piece of her past she had spent years trying to survive. Ava suffers from untreated anxiety, the lawyer said. She abandoned the marital home, he said. She fled with the child in the middle of the night, he said. Each blow pushed Ava back into old shadows, shadows where she apologized for bleeding. Michael placed a hand over hers, steady, grounding. Breathe, he whispered. When it was his turn, he rose with a controlled confidence that made Grayson shift in his seat. Your Honor, Michael began. The opposing counsel failed to mention why Ava fled, or what Jonah overheard, or that Mr. Hale filed for full custody without notifying her. He paced slowly. Or that Mr. Hale is currently under internal investigation for financial misconduct. A murmur rippled across the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is there evidence of this? Michael clicked a button on his laptop, sending a recording through the courtroom speakers. Grayson's voice filled the room. Ava won't win. She's weak. I'll destroy her in court if I have to. Jonah belongs with me. Ava's breath caught. Grayson's face drained of color. Michael continued. Your Honor, this is not a man seeking custody for the well-being of his child. This is a man seeking control. Then came the hardest part. Ava, please take the stand. Her heart pounded, but she rose. Jonah watched her with wide, trusting eyes as she walked past him. She took the oath, hands trembling but voice steady. Michael asked gently, Why did you leave? Ava looked straight at the judge. Because my son heard his father call me broken. Because he cried in my arms. Because staying meant teaching him love was pain. She didn't cry. She didn't crumble. She didn't apologize. She told the truth. And for the first time, the courtroom the world saw her not as the fragile wife Grayson crafted, but as the mother who refused to break. When she stepped down, Jonah smiled at her proudly. And Grayson, for the first time, looked afraid. The hearing drained Ava in ways she didn't know were possible. By the time she stepped out of the courthouse, her hands shook from the emotional weight of reliving years she had tried so hard to escape. Jonah walked beside her silently, his small hand tucked into hers, his eyes searching her face for some sign that the storm was finally passing. Michael offered to drive her home, but Ava chose to walk a bit first. She needed air. She needed to feel the ground under her feet. She needed to remember she still had a body, still had a life, still had choices. And that's when she saw Noah Stone standing at the corner. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't part of this world, the legal battles, the trauma, the unraveling of a marriage. Yet he stood with a gentle stillness, holding 2 cups of coffee, scanning the street until his eyes landed on her. Ava froze. "Noah? What are you doing here?" He stepped toward her, offering a warm cup. "Michael called me, said you might need support today." Her eyes widened. He shouldn't have. He did the right thing. Noah's voice was soft but sure. "I'm not here to intrude, Ava. I'm here because you deserve someone in your corner." Something in her chest cracked quietly, painfully. She hadn't had someone in her corner in years. Jonah looked up at Noah shyly. "Hi." Noah crouched down to his level. "Hey, buddy. You holding up okay?" Jonah nodded, then leaned closer to Ava's side. Noah saw it, and his expression softened even more. "Can I walk you 2 home?" he asked. Ava hesitated. She didn't want to rely on anyone. But when she looked at Jonah, tired, overwhelmed, clinging to her, she exhaled. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you." As they walked through the chilly afternoon, Ava felt her muscles relax for the first time in what felt like years. Noah didn't talk too much, didn't ask invasive questions, didn't try to fix anything. He just walked beside them, matching Ava's pace, creating a quiet buffer of safety she didn't know she needed. "You were brave today," Noah said softly, once Jonah ran a few steps ahead to chase a leaf. "I watched a lot of parents testify during my daughter's custody battle. Most crumble. You didn't." Ava swallowed. "I felt like I was crumbling." "Maybe," he said, "but you still stood. That's what Jonah will remember." A warm sting filled her eyes. She blinked it away. "Noah," she murmured, "I'm not ready for anything. I don't even know who I am yet." He nodded. "I'm not asking for anything, Ava. I'm just showing up." She looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time since leaving Grayson, she felt something unfamiliar bloom inside her. Safety. Not dependence. Not fear. Not obligation. But actual, real safety. They reached Lydia's building. Jonah rushed inside, eager to tell her how he won in court. Ava lingered at the doorway. "Thank you," she said, voice soft but full. "For being here." Noah offered a small, steady smile. "Anytime you need someone, you call me. And if you don't call, I'll understand that too." Ava nodded. "I'll call." He stepped back, hands in his pockets, the winter wind rustling his hair. "Good night, Ava." "Good night, Noah." He walked away slowly, as if giving her space even in his exit. Ava watched him go, her heart heavy, but not with fear. With possibility. For the first time, she felt what it was like to be safe in someone's presence, without losing herself in the process. The storm didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, small at first, then devastating. Grayson believed he had bottomed out when Ava refused to reconcile. He believed the humiliation he felt on her doorstep was the worst he would endure. He was wrong. It began with an email he wasn't supposed to see, an internal memo, accidentally copied to him instead of HR. A single line froze him in place. "Pending confirmation of misconduct, Mr. Hale's termination will be finalized by week's end." His vision blurred. He read it again. Termination. Grayson Hale. Terminated. That alone was enough to spark panic, but the next blow came faster. His company-issued laptop locked him out. His keycard stopped working. Security escorted him out of the Park Avenue building he'd once strutted through like he owned it. The humiliation was total. He tried calling Delilah because in moments of collapse, people cling to whoever used to feed their pride, but her number was disconnected. Her desk at work had been cleared. Rumors whispered she had cooperated fully with the investigation. Grayson felt the truth crawl up his spine. Delilah saved herself by sacrificing him. He tried calling his father, a man who valued perfection above blood. The call lasted 4 seconds. "Fix your mess," his father snapped. "Don't drag the family name through mud." Then, a click. No support. No allies. No empire. Meanwhile, Ava thrived in ways Grayson never anticipated. She was weeks into her job at Street Luke's when she found out the board wanted her to assist in developing a new counseling program for families in crisis. The director praised her intuition, her compassion, her strength. "You've been through the fire," he said. "People trust someone who survived it." Ava smiled shyly, touched in ways she couldn't articulate. Jonah was doing better too, sleeping through the night again, drawing pictures of Mommy and Jonah at the park, laughing without flinching. And Noah, he had become a quiet, steady presence in their orbit. He never pushed, never asked for more, never treated Ava as fragile. He was simply there, kind, reliable, safe. It terrified her how much that meant. But justice wasn't done. Michael called Ava one evening. "We received a notice. The district attorney is opening a formal case against Grayson." Ava's heart skipped. "For the financial fraud? And for filing false statements about you," Michael added. "It's rare, but the judge recognized malicious intent." "You won't go to jail for this marriage, Ava, but he might." She closed her eyes. "I never wanted to destroy him," Michael replied gently. "Ava, wanting accountability isn't destroying someone." She nodded, even though part of her still trembled at the thought of anyone, even Grayson, being dragged into court in handcuffs. But when she remembered Jonah's face, the night he overheard his father calling her broken, something hardened inside her. Grayson didn't get to wound and walk away. Not anymore. The final blow landed during a cold Wednesday morning. Ava was dropping Jonah off at preschool when a black sedan pulled up across the street. Two men stepped out, flashing badges. "Are you Mr. Grayson Hale?" Grayson froze on the sidewalk. Jonah squeezed Ava's hand. "Mommy, what's happening?" She knelt to face him. "Daddy made grown-up mistakes. The police are just talking to him." But they weren't just talking. Cuffs clicked around Grayson's wrists. The look he gave Ava wasn't anger. It was devastation. A silent plea. "Help me." But she didn't move. She held Jonah close and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're safe." Grayson was led into the car. His empire had crumbled. His lies exposed. His control shattered. And for the first time, the world saw him not as a powerful man, but as the architect of his own downfall. Ava straightened slowly, heart steady. Justice had begun. And she wasn't afraid anymore. 1 year after Grayson's arrest, the world felt different, lighter, steadier, warmer. The hearings were finished, the charges finalized, the custody agreement settled. Grayson received probation, fines, and mandatory counseling. His corporate life evaporated, his reputation dissolved. He moved to a small rental outside Newark, far from Park Avenue and even farther from the power he once worshipped. For Ava, justice had arrived quietly, not with celebration, but with peace. She never wanted him destroyed, only stopped. And he was. It was Christmas Eve again, but this time Ava wasn't running through the snow, heart pounding in fear. She was in Brooklyn, standing beneath the twinkling lights at the River Cafe, Manhattan glowing across the water like a promise instead of a threat. Jonah tugged her hand excitedly. "Mommy, look, the bridge lights are turning on." She smiled. "Beautiful, right?" He nodded vigorously. "It's the best Christmas ever." Ava's chest warmed. Yes, it truly was. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with soft music and warm laughter. Lydia and her daughter were already at the table, waving them over. Michael had stopped by earlier to drop off a gift for Jonah, for my bravest little guy, before heading to his own family celebration. But someone else was waiting at the table too. Noah. He stood as she approached, his smile gentle but bright. "You made it." Ava laughed softly. "Wouldn't miss it." Jonah darted to his side. "Noah, guess what? I got an A on my reading test." "That's amazing, champ." Noah high-fived him. "You've been working hard. If we know." A year ago, Jonah barely spoke above a whisper. Now he was thriving, drawing, reading, laughing, living. Ava took her seat, the warmth of the room settling over her like a blanket. It was strange how safety could feel unfamiliar at first, then suddenly become home. Dinner was joyful, full of stories and clinking glasses. But as dessert plates were cleared away, Noah stood up slowly. "Ava," he said, voice a little unsteady, "there's something I want to tell you." Her breath caught. Jonah's eyes sparkled. He clearly knew something she didn't. Noah stepped closer, holding a small velvet box in both hands, not flashy, not extravagant, just sincere. "When I met you," he began softly, "you were carrying the weight of a world that wasn't kind to you. You didn't need rescuing, you only needed someone to stand beside you while you rescued yourself." Her eyes welled instantly. "I watched you fight for Jonah, rebuild your life, rise after every blow, and I've never admired anyone more. I don't want to replace your past, I want to build your future." He opened the box. A simple diamond band, elegant and brilliant under the warm restaurant lights. Ava's breath trembled. "Will you marry me?" he asked quietly. "Not because you need me, but because you deserve a love that lifts you instead of breaking you." Jonah scrambled off his chair and ran to Ava's side. "Say yes, Mommy," he whispered. "Please say yes." A tear slipped down her cheek, not from pain, but from fullness. She looked at Noah, at Jonah, at the skyline of the city that had once caged her and was now witnessing her freedom. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Noah, I will." Noah exhaled shakily, slipping the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms. Jonah hugged them both, giggling, the happiest sound Ava had ever heard. For the first time, she felt truly, completely chosen, not for image, not for convenience, but for love. Outside, snow began to fall gently over Brooklyn Bridge, soft flakes drifting across the river, quiet, pure, forgiving. A year ago, she ran through the cold with nothing but fear. This year, she stood in the warmth of everything she deserved: a new family, a new life, a new love, and a future built from her own strength. So, this is where our story ends. But maybe, my dear friends, this is exactly where your reflection begins. If you're still here with me right now, it means something in Ava's journey touched your heart in a way you didn't expect. And that matters, because healing often begins the moment we see our own pain reflected in someone else's courage. Ava's story reminds us of a simple truth the Stoics knew well. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that centuries ago, yet it still guides us today. We cannot control betrayal, loss, or the storms that arrive without warning. But we can choose who we become after the storm. Ava didn't win because life suddenly became fair. She won because she refused to stay broken. She rose, step by step, choice by choice. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. You don't need to be fearless to change your life. You just need to take the first honest step. If this story touched you even a little, let us know. Like, share, and subscribe so more hearts can find their strength again. We're here with you, and your journey matters.